Welcome to Wordpath, the show about Oklahoma Indian languages and the people who are teaching and preserving them. Tonight we're going to discuss the Ponca language and some recent activities in Ponca language preservation. My guest is Kathleen Shea, a graduate student in linguistics at the University of Kansas. Kathy's writing a dissertation on the Ponca language. Welcome, Kathy. Tell us a little bit about your involvement with Ponca.
Well, as you said, I'm writing my dissertation at the University of Kansas. I'm working with three elders who are all native speakers of Ponca: Parrish Williams, Bertha Leroy, and Edna Hinman. And I've been coming to Ponca City for about 5 years. And recently, they started teaching Ponca in Frontier School, a local public school, and I was asked to help out, and then you and I are involved in that.
So we've been working together on this, what are they calling it now, the Ponca Language Arts Council, right? Of the Ponca Tribe of Oklahoma.
Right.
Well, let me explain to people that may not have seen previous Wordpath shows that this would be the third or fourth, actually the fourth language we addressed in a similar kind of format, which is, we call it Indian languages are not primitive languages, and the name of the language, to try to look in a little more detail at one particular language and just to show that, you know, there's this popular myth that Indian languages are more simple than English or European languages or something, and it's a bunch of baloney. So we're going to see that in some detail about Ponca tonight. And really, we'll look at the sound system and the grammar a little bit to offer some appreciation of how intricate and beautiful Ponca is, just like all of the Oklahoma Indian languages, but in its own particular way. Before we get going, though, I know you brought a couple of charts to give a little bit of background on the language. Let me hold these.
This is a map of the distribution of the Sioux languages. It's a language family that's spoken mostly in the Midwest, and the Poncas were originally in Nebraska. They were removed to Oklahoma, and Omaha and Ponca are actually dialects of the same language, so we probably should say Omaha Ponca language. You can see that they followed the rivers, and this is a map that shows where they were at the time of European contact. So the Missouri Valley Sioux languages are Crow and Hidatsa, and the rest are the Mississippi Valley, except for the southeastern languages like Ofo, Biloxi, Tutelo. We also have Winnebago, Iway Oto, Missouri, the Dakota dialects like Lakota, Nakota, Assiniboine, Stony. And there are quite a few Sioux languages. And then the next chart is a time. It sort of shows the time that we think that the different languages separated off from each other. So perhaps about 3,000 years ago, the Sioux languages were one language, and you can see where they separated. Now, Ponca is in the so-called Thegiha branch, which includes 5 very closely related languages, sort of like the Romance languages: Osage, Ka, Ponca, Omaha, and Quapaw. And of those, Omaha Ponca is pretty much the most spoken nowadays. So I think that's just a little background.
That gives a little background. Now, to start, I'm going to hand most of this show over to you, but to start, maybe we could talk a little bit together about the Ponca alphabet, which we have on the board here, because you and I were both involved with the Ponca Language Arts Council in developing this alphabet as a kind of open process. There were about a few linguists and a few native speakers of Ponca and other interested Ponca individuals were in on this process. Let's talk a little about that first.
Yes, this is something we had to jump into in a hurry because one of the local public schools wanted to start teaching Ponca in the high school, Frontier School in Noble County, and so we had to come up with some teaching materials and a writing system right away.
And this was a language that didn't have an established writing system.
Right. There have been several different writing systems in the past that have been used for Ponca. So we did this. It was a group process, and I think it turned out pretty well.
Yeah. Now, just to give people a little bit of the feel of what goes into that kind of process, as you mentioned, the language had been written by several different researchers. There wasn't any one standard, but we kind of started, you made us charts of the different systems to compare how different people had represented the same sounds, and we kind of compared and thought which ones we liked better. But some of the factors, of course, that we considered were simplicity of use. For instance, we didn't want to use any of these fancy-looking linguistic symbols that you can't find on a typewriter or that kind of tend to put people off when they're learning new symbols. We tried to stick to ordinary English alphabet symbols, but using them in a special way that suited Ponca, right?
Yeah, I think we talked about that there are a certain number of basic sounds in Ponca, and they can be written any way that we decide on, as long as we're consistent and agree. And we decided we wanted something that elders could recognize easily, and children who had English speakers could recognize. So a lot of the way we write it, it has some of the same letters as in English. Well, actually.
Right. Yeah, where possible, if there was a consistent English way of spelling the sound, we figured why spell it any different way.
Right.
So what we came up with uses just any keyboard that you can spell English with, you can use for this system. There are a couple of well, there's one exception basically, which is these superscripted things, which I think you're going to talk about in a minute, the raised N and the raised H. But maybe I should just, we've got 36 sounds altogether, right? Including glottal stop, which we've seen in
this is the glottal stop right here.
Languages.
That's a sound as in uh-oh. In
the middle sound.
Sort of that catch in your throat.
Right.
And there are a number of sounds that aren't in English, so we had to find ways to write those.
What are some examples of those?
Well, one is this h sound, and you hear that in German, h, and the voice counterpart r, where your vocal cords are vibrating. Another is nasal vowels that French has nasal vowels, but English doesn't. This is I and on, and some other sounds that are in English, but well, English has b, d, and g, and it has p, t, and k. We don't write the little h there, but actually in English you have a puff of air. Ponca has both of those, and then it has another series. We call these stops, and it has a p, d, and g, and that's similar to what Spanish has. So, for instance, Spanish has these two series of stops. English has these two, but Ponca has 4 series of stops. So the last series is a and a t, so it has a little popping sound. And I think at one time Ponca had a k also, but it has disappeared and become an a. So those are basically the sounds that Ponca has. It has a th sound as in English, like that or then. It has a sh. So we use 2 letters to spell one sound in some cases. Je, zh, and well, you saw the r here. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, maybe would you mind just pronouncing a few words of Ponca that have some of these distinctive sounds, just to kind of, and maybe point to the sound as you do it or something?
Okay. Well, let's see.
So people can hear a little bit more than just the sounds in isolation.
Well, I could go through the whole alphabet, but take too long.
That'd take too long, probably.
Let's see.
Well, how about, like, can you think of a word that has that ZH sound in it?
Okay, the word for beaver is jabe, or jani means sugar.
So sugar is spelled Z-H-A-N-I, right? No, yes?
Well, yeah,
right?
I think it's a nasal A, maybe. Jean.
Z-H, A with the little nasal N and an I.
And then, let's see, this, we have a h sound. Hade is the word for grass. We have a h with a little glottal stop after it. So you have the word means sour, I think. Hade. And also we have S. Sabe means black. Macan sabe is coffee. And then
tell people what that means. I love the Ponca expression.
Macan is medicine, and sabe is black. So coffee is like, actually macan is like herb or medicine. Yeah. Black medicine.
Perfect name for coffee as far as I'm concerned. That's great.
And then sade, I can't pronounce it. Sade means salty. Wanompi with that sound, it means necklace.
So all the little, the P apostrophe, the X apostrophe, the S apostrophe, they're like a glottal stop right after, kind of fused onto that consonant, whatever it is.
And this like P with the puff of air is ompa, is the word for elk. Those are sort of rare. The ones with the little apostrophe and actually the ones with the little H after them are somewhat rare.
But you do need to be able to spell them for certain words.
Yes, and this, the word for woman is wa'u. No means to hear. Let's see, Kage, Ikage, his friend, and
Okay.
I think that's about it.
Good. That's a great introduction to the alphabet and the sounds, the 36 sounds of Ponca.
Right.
They also have a distinction between, or at least we've been writing a distinction between long and short vowels in our committee work. It's
So-
kind of not clear to me yet exactly what the status of that is in the structure of the
Right.
language, but if you want to pronounce words correctly, you say those vowels a little bit longer in
Yeah.
some
So
words
f-
than in others, so then we just write that vowel symbol twice, like
Right.
AA for an ah.
So, like the word for heart is nande, and the word nande means the inside of the perimeter of a teepee. So,
Say that example again.
nande means heart, that's a long,
It's a long ah.
nasal ah,
Uh-huh.
and then nande is the inside perimeter of a teepee. So if you
Okay.
go sit by the nande
Okay.
wall.
So that shows that you need to be able to make that distinction between the longer vowels and the shorter ones, at least for a few words.
I've been corrected when I haven't made the decision.
Right. We don't want to say something we didn't intend to say.
Yeah.
Well, Kathy, you're the expert here, so I'm going to pretty much hand it over to you from now on. I think you were going to say a little bit about active stative distinction. Maybe while you do that, I'll get up and arrange the chart for the next
Okay.
section for you.
Okay, fine. Well, like many Native American languages, Ponca has what we call active verbs and stative verbs. And this is different from English. A stative verb, essentially in English, is like an adjective. So if you want to say that he is tall, we need to say he and have the verb is, and then tall, which is the adjective. In Ponca, you don't have that verb is in there. So you just say he talls is what it would sound like. And so, so for instance, I'm tall would be on snede. You're tall, the snede. Snede means tall. We're tall, wa snedai. Then other verbs, like for instance, running, are active, and they take different pronoun prefixes. So I'm running would be attendre. You're running, d'attendre. We're running, entendre. So I don't know if you can tell, but the beginnings of those verbs are different. In some cases, the distinction is not quite very apparent. For instance, if you want to say I burped, that would be a stative verb. You'd say omba'u and the ba'u, you burped. But it implies that you don't have control over what you're doing, sort of. But on the other hand, if you want to say I threw up, that's an active verb. Agdebe, the agdebe, you threw up. So sometimes it's sort of a difficult distinction to make. There's one verb that I have here that if it's stative, it means one thing, and if it's active, it means another thing. So for instance, if you ask someone, Ada kigda shonwa, did you turn over in the car? That's active, and if it's adi kigda shonwa, then that means did you get in a wreck? So it's the same verb with different pronouns, makes it active or stative, and it means a slightly different thing. I think I'll talk about the instrumental prefixes. And this is something that is most of the Sioux languages have, and it's really sort of fun. It's interesting because we have all these little words that go in front of the verb that mean by means of. It's like we call them instrumental prefix because it tells how something is done. So, for instance, ba is by pressing with the hand. No is by pressing with the foot. Ma is by cutting. Tha with the mouth or by blowing. Ga by striking or sometimes by action of wind or water. The by pulling. Na by heat. Mu by shooting. And bi by body pressure. So I'll just take one word and sort of show you how it changes meanings when it has these different instrumental prefixes. There's a verb root, tube, which is never used by itself, but it sort of means generally to break up into little pieces. So, ba tube would be to grate something by pushing. No tube would be to like stomp on dirt clods and break up dirt clods. And also in modern times it's by machine, so it might be a tractor or something that's breaking up the dirt. I don't think you can use ma with tube, but that tube would be to chew something up. Ga tube is like pounding corn. The tube is like grinding corn in a coffee grinder. Na tube would be like by heat, by boiling something until it falls apart. And bi tube would be like pressing dry leaves and crumbling them up with your hands. So, so that's something that is in most of the Sioux, I think all of the Sioux languages have this type of thing. The next topic is, well, I just wanted to mention the word order in Ponca. Usually, well, in English, we usually have a subject and a verb and an object. So you might say, John threw the ball. And in Ponca, the verb always comes at the end. So you would say, John ball the threw. And here's an example. This doesn't have well, the subject, it's a command, so it really doesn't have the subject expressed. But this is Jean K. Jean is wood, K means the, so it's like a stick of wood. The zaga, and this would be a man saying this because this is ga at the end. By the way, there's a little bit of difference in men and women's speech in Ponca. So actually, if I were saying this, I'm a woman, so I would say Jean K. the za. So I would say ah instead of ga. And so here you have would the get. And I'm told that in the Star Wars movie, Yoda, the Jedi Master, speaks in that word order with the verb at the end. But I haven't seen that Star Wars movie. So anyway, in English, of course. Oh, thanks, Alice. The next subject I'm going to talk about is something that is sort of special with the Theygiha languages, those 5 languages I mentioned, and it was more or less an innovation. In English, we have a definite article, the, and we just have 1. In Ponca, they have 10, and, well, I guess maybe 11, I might say. I don't know if I should compare it to French, which has like masculine and feminine definite articles, la and le, and you have to memorize those. But in Ponca, they indicate position and shape, and sometimes moving or resting. So here's a little sort of chart. I guess I have to stand up for this. If the definite article is inanimate, not live, I mean, if the noun that we're talking about, like Jean, wood, is not living, then we have 4 different definite articles. K is long and horizontal. Te is vertical, upright. Ton is something round. Oh, excuse me, thon, sorry. And gay is little scattered pieces. So for instance, if you want to say, with the previous example, get me that stick of wood, you would say, Jean K, the zaga, or the za, using the horizontal definite article. If you're talking about a stack of wood, it's upright, so you'd say, Jean Te, the zaga, or That would be this vertical, upright article. So you can see that the upright also means like a number of things stacked up. Something round, oh dear. I had something. Well, you have a little weishi bean that people gamble with, and you'd say, one of these beans is gone. Weishi dong, withinge. If you want to say some of the beans are gone, weishi te. dube, withinge. So you'd be using the vertical, which actually means like a stack of beans. If all the beans are marked, which they sometimes are when you gamble, then you'd say duba thinge, using this gay, the scattered article. Now, if what you're talking about is something that's living, then it's different if it's the subject or the object of the sentence, if it's singular or plural, and if it's resting or moving, and in the case of the object, if it's moving, standing, sitting, or plural. So if you want to say that dog's barking, shinu da aka uhuhu. So this is the subject, singular, resting article, aka. Did you hear that dog bark? Would be shinu da tong uhuhu da na anwa. So that would be the he's standing barking as if if he's tied up, tong. Shinu da thin uhuhu da na anwa. Then that's in that case he's moving. He's moving around, barking. Did you hear that dog, moving dog barking? Let's see. Okay, well, I guess I really don't, at the moment, I don't think I have some examples. Well, if all the dogs are barking, then you would use this ama. So let me see. I think I have that written. Probably shinu da ama. Uhuhu. So, uhuhui. Anyway, that gives you an idea, I think.
Yeah.
I guess I better move on, because let's see.
Those are amazing.
Is that the...
you were going to talk a little bit about verbs of motion, I think.
Oh, right. Ponca has, like other Sioux languages, has about 8 verbs of motion. So you have, you can say someone is arriving here, arriving there, coming, going, and then you have a little something you attach to all those verbs that means home or back. So you can be arriving back here, arriving back there, coming back here, going back there. So you have quite a bit of variety in those.
So this is pretty amazing, Kathy. Thank you so much for helping us to see some of the beauty and intricacy of Ponca. This is no simple language, is it?
No, and I just touched the surface. So.
I know you did. I think those articles especially are just amazing. They kind of blow my mind. It's
something that still don't quite understand all of the aspects of it, but I'm learning by doing the research I'm doing. So
yeah,
and I also want to say I'm grateful to the Ponca people that have been helping me.
Okay, well, we have a few minutes left before we wrap it up. We have about 1 minute in which we could talk a little more about the language committee or that process if you'd like.
Okay.
I know one thing I appreciate about your involvement with that committee is that so often, especially when people are working on a dissertation or some massive research project, they kind of get buried in the details and they treat the language as a thing and they're always charting and computerizing and they don't have much contact with the community. I feel like you've really made quite an effort to become a part of that community and give more of a human face to the Ponca language than some researchers would. I think that's a good thing that you've done, and I think your involvement on this Ponca Language Arts Council is good evidence of that. I'm glad that you're not always having your nose buried in a book and that you're actually involved in people's efforts to preserve their own language and teach their own language.
Thank you.
I know I always try to do that too, but I do think it's on the rare side for linguists to take that much of an involvement with the people.
Thank you. Well, I just feel that, all the Poncas have been so good to me, and I'm getting something out of this. And when I was called upon, because this was sort of urgent, the elders, most of the fluent native speakers are in their 70s and 80s, so we wanted to get this going right away, this class, and so I felt like I just had to help out because, so. Well, I'm learning a lot too by doing that.
I know,
when you have to.
It's a great. You have a lot to gain from the experience yourself too. I know. I feel the same way when I'm advising on projects like this or involved in committees like this. Well, that's about all we have time for tonight. I want to wish you good luck on your dissertation. I'm sure it will be excellent. And thank you again for being here. It's a long drive down from Ponca City, and I really appreciate your coming to be on the show. Before we say goodnight, I want to remind everybody about our annual Intertribal Wordpath Society celebration of Oklahoma language and culture. It's Friday, October 22nd from 6 to 10:30 p.m. at the Cleveland County Fairgrounds in Norman. That's 615 East Robinson Street. It'll be an evening of songs, stories, poetry, dance, and of course Indian tacos. And items of linguistic and cultural interest will be sold at vendor booths at the event, and it's a free event, so please come and join us. See you next time on Wordpath.
Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita.